What's up, football fans? That was a little over the top, but welcome to another episode of the Backyard Blitz, brought to you by Backyard Sports. Tonight with me, sadly, only Gary Freeze. Not sad because it's Gary Freeze, but sad, tear. No Raul tonight. He had a heavy flow. Had to get the big ones. What's up, Gary, man? How's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's I'm still recovering from Monday night, but I'm good. At least now I can just concentrate on my fantasy teams.
Yeah, and it's sometimes nice to fall back on.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Union County Sheriff of Arkansas, Ricky Roberts, you scumbag, for reportedly, I don't know if it's 100% true, but a couple of decent sources report that he's, having his inmates or people just coming in, for whatever crime they did and staying the night, pose for their mugshot in Nike as some apparent jab at Nike and Colin Kaepernick because, he's not racist.
All black people are criminals, right?
No, it has nothing to do with their skin color.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
not racist.
Absolutely not. Fucking idiots.
So, Arkansas, we're shocked that it came from Arkansas.
Yeah, go figure.
I think we get a pretty good show for you guys tonight. We're going to miss Raul like we were talking about before, but Gary and I are going to hold down the ship, so to speak. We're going to start with what could be a reunion, and that's the reports of LeSean McCoy apparently in, discussions. The Bills and the Eagles are in discussions to send him back to Philly. McCoy obviously has ties to Philly other than just playing his first 6 seasons with the Eagles, where he had like 50 total touchdowns, a little more than 50 total touchdowns, was an absolute stud. I luckily had him first couple of years he broke out in my fantasy team. It was so great. Gary, what do you think about these reports? And also the reports that Philly's reportedly not pursuing
Le'Veon Bell.
I got anymore. I almost call him LeSean Bell because LeSean.
It's close. Yeah, to start with the Bell thing, I think the biggest thing is that the Eagles, for all the people out there that are kind of armchair GMs, they don't understand how the cap works, right? And the Eagles are cap strapped. They are. They just are. They went all in last year, and they tried to keep as much as they could this year. And they did a pretty good job. Most Super Bowl teams kind of fall apart. They didn't really. They lost some players, but they didn't lose a ton of talent like a lot of Super Bowl champions do. So they are against the cap. And you can trade for somebody, but even him just signing the franchise tender puts them I think it was $10 million over the cap. So they'd have to figure out a ton of stuff to do around it just to get Le'Veon Bell. So I don't think it's necessarily that the Eagles are saying, no, we're good. We don't want him. It's that we can't get him. We just can't. It's not possible. So the next best option is somebody who's on a long-term contract, who could restructure, who could get there, right? And right now you've got LeSean McCoy is not being utilized the way he probably wants to in Buffalo, not the way he's been previously utilized in Buffalo. And he's been a great player in both Philly and Buffalo, right? He was a big part of the reason they made the playoffs last year. So I understand his kind of desire to get out of town. The team's rebuilding, and he's at the back end of his career. We talked about it last week, and I think the week before as well. Running backs, they get over the hill, and the hill for them is 30. So I think it's a great reunion. Taking my Redskins cap off for a minute, I honestly think it's a great reunion. The Eagles are looking for somebody who can supplement not only the pass game but the run game, and they've drafted a couple of guys and they've picked up a couple of guys who are injured right now that can't play and fill that role. So I think McCoy is somebody who can both tote the rock on a first and second down basis, but can also serve in a third down role. And then, you just kind of hope from there as you move ahead that you can get the passing game going, because they haven't been great up to this point. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know if they're going to get him, but I think if they get him, I think in a non-partisan way, I think it's a great move if I'm an Eagles fan.
Real quick, I think veteran back, 30 years old. You talked about the contract versus Le'Veon Bell's situation, which, obviously plays well for the Eagles. Familiarity with the city, I think that's probably good for the fans. I think the biggest thing for the Eagles is get back to running the football. It's almost one of those things where they're trying to get a little too cute, I think, after the Super Bowl season. It's almost one of those things where it's like a Marshawn Lynch with the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, where it's like, why didn't you run the ball on the 1 yard line? Not quite as egregious as that, but I think they need to get back to their bread and butter. JJ, thanks for being on 2 of my fantasy teams this year. Love you, bud. Get well soon. And that's really it for me. I think
so you mentioned the city, right? And I've got probably at least a dozen Eagles fans that are still people that I communicate with. None of them wanted Shady to go, right? When Chip Kelly traded Shady, none of them understood it. None of them wanted it. It was kind of like the Deshaun Jackson situation. None of them really understood it. And, there was a little bit of kind of polar opposites with Jackson. But I think for the most part, the people I've talked to that are Eagles fans, they didn't want him to leave to begin with. So I think, like you said, with the city, there's familiarity, but there's also still some love there for Shady.
Yeah, sure. And Philadelphia fans love nothing aside from ice balls at Santa Claus's head. I joke. I kid. 2 points about that quickly is 1, Kiko Alonso, LOL. And 2, LeSean McCoy is the only dude I've ever seen play in a foot of snow as if it were a bright 90-degree day. Shout out to the Philly Lions Snow Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah. And he still looked like he was running on clean turf. It was amazing.
Bro,
what do you have, 180 yards or something like that? It was crazy.
1,000 yards, rushing 19 touchdowns, unaffected by the weather completely. It was like driving a tank through an inch of snow. I don't even know what happened there. Yeah. Okay, so, as they say, on to the next one. We're going to talk about another individual, and that's Drew Brees. Big accomplishment this week, unfortunately for Gary. And Gary mentioned it before the game even happened. But, Drew Brees is now number 1 with like 72,100 and some change yards passing. Past Peyton Manning as the all-time passing yards leader. And I think he has 499 touchdowns.
Yeah, one more for 5.
One more for 5, and it puts him at like 4th or something on the all-time list. And, he'll probably – I'm assuming he's probably going to get that record too. But, Brady's got 500 as well.
Brady just hit 500, that's right. So it is.
So, yeah. So those two will kind of be fighting the next –
Yeah.
What are they, like 26 out or something on the all-time?
I think it's more than that. I think Manning's at like 540s. I don't know. I'd be guessing if
I can look it up. Peyton Manning has – okay, so they're about 40 touchdowns out.
40, okay, so about 540. All right. Yeah, that's around what I thought it was. And I like you said, I posted it before the game. He needed like 211 yards or something like that to pass Peyton to start the game. And it's Drew Brees, right? He was going to get it. I didn't think we were going to get blown out, but things happen. A couple calls didn't go our way that I didn't like, but that's kind of the breaks. And then our defense wasn't prepared. And this isn't about the Redskins, but, it's kind of just what it was. And Drew Brees picked us apart. He just fucking picked us apart. And he didn't even use really his most one of his 2 most dangerous weapons throughout the game. Kamara never touched the damn ball. It was crazy. And he still ended up with just – fucking great fantasy numbers. And I have him in one of my leagues. So, I kind of had to both post on Facebook he was going to break the record against my team, and 2, watch him fucking light up the scoreboard against my team because I needed the points for a fantasy win. And I did get the win. Thank you, Drew. But, it's great. And I think that we're looking at right now kind of the precipice, right? We're at that bridge time between eras. And we had Elway, Marino, Kelly as part of the transition from a strictly ground and pound defensive game, run the clock, 13-10, 15-12 games like that. And then you started to see some offenses open up, right? Kelly had the K gun, and Marino was the best thrower of the football I think I've ever seen. His quick release, and Rodgers is up there too. But the transition started with those guys to this quarterback-driven league, and then they became stars, right? Kelly, Marino, and Elway became stars, and the public gave a shit. And now it's a quarterback league. It is point blank a quarterback league. We can talk about running backs. We can talk about wide receivers. Ask the Giants how it's working out, paying fucking Odell Beckham that much money, right? They look like shit. So it's a quarterback league, and we're starting to see there's a bridge, and I think it starts with Brees and Brady, and it ends with probably like Matthew Stafford, right, as the bridge quarterbacks between when 50,000 yards was a big deal and when 50,000 yards was kind of like the benchmark, right? And that's what it's become, because 50,000 yards is a lot of damn yards. But if you look, Stafford hasn't had kind of the success and wins that, you know, some of these other quarterbacks have, but he's going to end up with 70,000 yards probably by the time his career is over. So Breeze is like statistically the benchmark for this bridge kind of era that we're looking at. And the dude has just been phenomenal. He's pinpoint accurate. He's only 6 foot tall, and that's probably given him an extra inch, maybe two, right? The dude probably isn't actually 6 foot tall. It's astounding to watch him stand on his tiptoes and throw the ball at this high arc release and be able to just put it on the mark. So I salute Drew for what he's done. His statistics speak for themselves. The dude revitalized a city that got crushed by Hurricane Katrina. So my hat's off. You know, honestly, Drew, great. I hated watching it against my team, but man, you're a stud. You're a stud.
And he got that mole laser removed a few years back, so that was also a good thing. You know, shout out to Drew Brees. I think that you know, you pointed out the 6 foot, maybe one with being generous type thing, and you know that just kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other things. I'll tell you, we were talking about this the other day. I think it was yesterday, a little bit. Sometimes I come home and I sit on my lunch break during the middle of the day, and there's not shit on my television, so I'm forced to either sit there and watch like 16 and Pregnant OG edition, because that's a fucking thing now. OG
that might be
edition.
better than what you have for your other option, though.
Why is OG edition? So you're the original gangster, because that's what OG means for all you kids out there wearing skinny jeans and listening to mumble rap. Original gangster of getting knocked up when you were fucking 12. So it's either that or I watch Colin Coward, and I fucking hate it. But sometimes I just am trying to listen to sports, and sometimes I'll be honest, I listen to Colin just because I want to hear the dumb shit he's going to say. But he did bring up some really good points about Drew Brees, and I'm, instead of having an original thought, I'm going to echo it because I agree with it full-heartedly. You know, he said a lot about how Brees was, you know, injured in school, coming into the NFL, injured his last year before being traded,
and it was a catastrophic injury.
And San Diego really didn't want him anyway. They wanted the 6'5" Phillip Rivers, who had the big arm. And then he goes to New Orleans, and it's not a football thing, but there's a natural disaster. It's called Hurricane Katrina. I did see some of you posting, where was Obama during Hurricane Katrina? He was a fucking senator. So get off your horse. And so Brees had to deal with that. They played home games, not at home. That counts in the, you know, the National Football League. So I think that he's overcome a lot. To see him where he is, that's great. I'm done with this topic. Gary, I do want to ask you one thing, and this is kind of putting you on the spot a little bit. As far as the conversation of GOAT goes, I know you probably don't have Brees as your GOAT, but where do you think right now you would rank Drew Brees?
Oh,
all time.
Man, that's a really tough question, because I mean,
give me a
criteria kind of changes.
Friendly feeler here.
You know, honestly, for me, I'm too young to have watched some of the old people that some of these guys try to put in, like Sammy Baugh and Sonny Jurgensen, and you know, some of the really old guys. And I appreciate Johnny Unitas. He was the guy when it came to the forward pass, right? He was the main kind of driving force, I guess, for the forward pass. So, I mean, for me, Unitas probably could never get out of the top 5. So I've got to figure out who those next 4 are, right? Who's the next 4? And Unitas is probably going to be at 5 for me, and then it's 4 above him. And you know, I've got Brady, I've got Peyton, and I love to put Marino in there because I just enjoyed watching him play the position. But I think the fact that he never won the big one does slide him out of the top 5. And I've got Elway in there. So I've got 3, and I've got one more position. And to be honest with you, the most prolific quarterback in history, it's hard not to put him in that top 5. honestly. And I know the era is different, and we can talk and split hairs all day about era versus era. I'm 34 years old. For me, Drew Brees is number 4.
I like it going on. And I could never, for me personally, I can't put Marino out of my top 5 because
it's tough for me. It's tough.
To me, Marino,
though, he started this whole driving force for the forward pass.
Yeah, and Marino to me is like a Barry Sanders in a sense. Like he's almost like a myth in your mind because you were a kid when you watched it happen. Like for us, like a Michael Jordan or a Larry Bird or somebody of that stature. So Marino to me, and I feel like in this era, Marino would throw for 6,000 yards. I think he had the most prolific arm ever. But I'm not going to give you mine because that question was for you. So,
so here's the thing, and this is what I say, and you just kind of brought it to my attention exactly what Marino is to me, and I say this all the time. Like, he's the if-only guy. He is the if-only guy.
Absolutely.
If only he had a running game. If only he had a decent defense. He never had a pretty good defense. Like, his defenses were trash, and he was awesome. He was awesome. If we're talking favorite quarterbacks, Marino's definitely in my top 5, probably in my top 3, honestly. Favorite quarterbacks to watch, probably in my top 3, maybe even near the top, maybe even number 1.
And I absolutely agree. And this is a good time to segue into our last topic of the night, and that is what the fuck are these quarterbacks in this passing game doing to the defenses? And, before we, I pass it on to Gary because that's really where I want to go with this topic. I was just this, we've been seeing it, and it hasn't just been this season, but we've been seeing it this season a little more, I think. And just looking at last week, because I didn't get to watch a lot. I was out of town. But the Vikings, who were number 1 last season in yards given up, they gave up 21 points. The Jags were number 2. They gave up 30 points. You had the Broncos at number 3. They gave up 34 points. The Eagles at 4 gave up 23. And the Steelers were the only ones who had a good week. They won 41-17. And obviously that Vikings beat the Eagles. But all of these teams, with the exception of the Steelers, that were the top 5 defenses last season in yards given up, gave up at least 21 points, 2 of which gave up 30 or more. So, I kind of want to segue into where has the defense gone? The touching on, you can't touch the quarterback. We talked about Clay Matthews not being able to tackle a quarterback, that sort of thing. But what is going on with some of these defenses? Mainly like the Vikings, Jaguars, Eagles haven't been that impressive this season.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see, and I touched on it a little bit with the quarterbacks, right? We're starting to see a transition to where the benchmark is, right? For quarterbacks, we're talking 50,000 yards at the benchmark now. And it used to be a lot of different things, right? 300 touchdowns used to be a big deal. Now with defenses, it's almost like if you keep them under 28, that might be a good day. And that's, to me, I don't know how much I actually enjoy it, because I see these penalties, and we talked a lot about the penalties in the past, but the last 2 weeks, they haven't really been calling it. And I don't know if it's because defenses are scared to touch the quarterback or if they're really just kind of cutting back on calling it, or maybe it's a combination of both. It might be a little bit of both. It could be. Defenses just, they're so hamstrung. They're so hamstrung to the point where you're almost sterilizing defenses. They can't hit. They don't know how to tackle because you give them different rules each week. It seems like they changed the rule on tackling different positions. It was I forget who it was. I want to say I can't remember who it was, and I had this in my mind just a little bit ago. But it was Landon Collins. Landon Collins of the Giants reached out to intercept a ball, hit a dude with the back of his fucking helmet, and got a 15-yard fucking penalty. What is that? What is that? If we're regulating that, we got to take helmets off them. We have to. We got to take helmets off them. And we might even have to just put flags on them, honestly. Because if we're calling somebody who's trying to make a play on the football, he didn't mess up and accidentally tackle somebody incorrectly. He almost intercepted the football. Ended up hitting a dude with the back of his helmet. We're getting out of control. And this is why defenses, in my opinion, are getting to the point where they just they don't know what to do. And you've gotten all these athletes on the offensive side of the ball that it's hard to contain them to begin with because everybody's bigger, stronger, faster now. It's hard to contain offenses to begin with. But then you start throwing all these extra rules at it. You can't touch them. You can't hold them. And they don't know how to call holding. I watched it in the Redskins game. I watched it in the afternoon game that I watched. 5, 6, probably 7 illegal contact or holding calls that were incorrect. It was insane to me that we don't know how to interpret these rules. And if we're going to call somebody for the back of his helmet hitting somebody in the head, how the hell are we ever going to play defense? And that's really what it's. And I think we're getting a lot more athletes that should be playing defense that are playing offense because they get a lot of glory and they get all the pay, right? So there's a lot of factors, but man, it's getting to the point where it's tough to watch these games because it's just so lopsidedly favored for the offense.
So, my quick take will be that I understand that offense sells, scoring sells. It's the reason a lot of people honestly don't watch hockey. And I know you guys are going to come with like pitchforks and torches, but I assure you I'm not Frankenstein hockey purists. And you people who watch soccer or football, this is why people don't watch those sports more. I think this is why a lot of people will lean to the NFL or even the NBA because it's high scoring. However, I'm a defensive guy, regardless of the sport. I love defense. And I kind of thought last season we were getting to a place of where, you can't touch anybody, but some defenses really look good. Minnesota's defense and the Jaguars are the two that stood out to me the most. Even Philly, you had this just defensive thing that was happening, and I was like, man, these boys hit, and now we've went backwards a little bit, and I've got this thing pulled up a little bit.
Well, and here's something quick while you're looking at that. Think about what those two defenses did last year, though. You talk about the Vikings, you talk about the Jaguars. What two things did those two do that was unique against any other defense in the NFL? They got after the quarterback. Yeah. You can't touch the quarterback now. Like, you literally can't form tackle the quarterback now without getting a penalty. These defenses are really they're neutered, basically.
Thanks, Anthony Barr. The stats I'm looking at are, if you look at it, and again, the season's not finished this year, but for passing yardage last season, okay, the leaders per game were the Chargers with 276 and some change yards per game passing. Now, if you fast forward to this season, and it was the Ryan Fitzpatrick-led Buccaneers with 363. And for you kids who aren't strong at math, that's almost 100 yards difference. And the defensive thing will tell you the same story. If you look at last season, you had the Jacksonville Jaguars gave up 169 passing yards a game. We just talked about them. They get after the quarterback. They hit you from everywhere. Now this season, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars again, but they're giving away $191. You're talking 20-some yards difference per game. And as you go down the list, like, you have the Packers in here, the Lions. The Lions are in here. I mean, it's just we've went a weird way, and it's mostly because these guys don't know what to do with the quarterback. They don't know if they can touch him. They might have to sing a lullaby, take him out to a steak dinner, rub his balls. Yeah. I mean, it's out of control.
Pat him on his ass till he falls asleep.
You have any final thoughts on this, Gary?
Yeah. It's miserable to watch, and I understand from the NFL's perspective, right? Yeah, they want to sell tickets, and chicks dig the long ball, right? Baseball had that thing, that advertising marketing campaign for a long time, right? Until steroids became a big deal, right? Baseball was cool with steroids until steroids was kind of, out of vogue, right? The NFL right now is in a situation where it's chicks dig the long ball. They want to see quarterbacks winging the ball over the field. And I think that the Eagles are falling victim to that. That's part of what's going on with them. And the NFL is trending toward that. And that's what we're looking at, really. It really is.
I want to liken this to basketball real quick because I talked about how I like the defense. One of the best basketball games I can remember watching, and I've watched a shitload of basketball. I mean, especially the past 5 or 6 seasons, League Pass and all that. I think it was 4 seasons ago, Martin Luther King Day. Rudy Gay was still on the Grizzlies. Grizzlies were one of the best. I think they were actually the best defensive team in the league. And then you had the Pacers with Danny Granger and Paul George and Roy Hibbert were like the best team in the East. And those two played on Martin Luther King Day, and it was ridiculous. And actually it came down to like Rudy Gay mismanaging the clock at the end and not getting a shot off. But I live tweeted that game back when, I had a different website, Sports Kings. That was like literally the epitome for me. I could have watched like a 25-game series of just those two going at each other, cracking each other's skulls.
It was like an 82-79 game.
It was entertaining without the scoring because it was just, there were notable players all over the place. Rudy Gay and Zach Randolph and Connolly and Marc Gasol, and then you had Hibbert and Granger and Paul, the up-and-coming Paul George on the other side. So all the star power was there, but like, they were allowed to play defense, and you kind of start to miss some of that stuff. And I thought we were getting it back in the NFL last year, and we're just not. So,
yeah.
All right, Gary.
Tough. Man. We're doing this? We're doing this quick hit right here at the end, huh? The NFC fucking East, man.
Let's go.
NFC fucking East. 0-4 this past weekend. 0-4. I feel like we're about to
make it 30 seconds. That's all.
I want to rough them up real bad, but I feel like we're about to see a division winner at 7-9. That's how bad the fucking NFC East is. Honestly, the Redskins got just crushed by the Saints on Monday night, and they're in first place still. Because the other three teams lost on Sunday and looked like trash, we couldn't fall out of first place. If the Eagles go make a move and they get a running back, maybe they get to the point where they're probably the favorite in the East. But, man, is it a fucking bad division. It's like the NFC West was like 5 years ago. It's just terrible. Actually, probably longer than that since the Seahawks. Before the Seahawks got good, the NFC West was terrible. Ugh.
That's it? That's it. I'm proud of you.
Oh, I kept it under a minute for once. I never have.
Way under a minute.
I never have.
I almost went over there because I thought you were going to take long. So
I wanted to.
You've got our salute to service. So let's get that done, and then we'll wrap things up here.
All right. Tonight's salute to service. Army Specialist Gabriel Condi, 22, Loveland, Colorado, died April 30th in Tagab District in Kabiza Province, Afghanistan, of enemy small fire. To you, we have the watch.
And I need to point out that Gary does a very good job with pronunciation because I would have for sure, not to make light of the situation, but I would have for sure fucked some of that up. So
some of the names get crazy.
Real quick before we get out of here, give me one thing you're looking forward to this week in the NFL.
I want to see how Mahomes bounces back. I've been on his case since the get-go. I said if he played well against the Jaguars that I would give him his props. He didn't look good against the Jaguars. They won. The Chiefs might be the real deal, but Mahomes didn't look that good against the Jaguars. And it's kind of, to me, a continuation of what happened in the first 3.5 quarters against the Broncos, right? Tight defense and those. The fucking Chiefs scored defensive touchdowns, right? And Blake Bortles is terrible. He threw a pass off his own lineman's helmet. So let me see what Patrick Mahomes does after a little bit of, kind of tribulation there. Because he threw his first 2 picks. He threw 14 touchdowns, no picks. 2 picks this past weekend, no passing touchdowns. Yeah, he had a rushing touchdown, but no passing touchdowns. I want to see how he bounces back because I'm really paying attention to this young buck now because, he's kind of proved me wrong. And maybe I want him to flounder to prove me right. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to see how he bounces back for real.
So no Lions game this week, which may be a good thing. It depends on what Lions show up because they're like a weird team. I mean, they can like beat the Packers and the Patriots, but they can't handle the Jets. It's weird that I'm saying this, but I'm kind of looking forward to the Chargers and Browns. Of all the games I looked at, I kept coming back to that one and being like, man, I kind of want to see Phillip Rivers play Baker Mayfield, which is so fucking strange, but it's the real deal. I want to say on behalf of myself, Gary Freeze, Raul, bailed on us tonight.
Yeah, we're going to have to give him shit for that forever.
Backyard Sports. Oh, I can't do the 2 fingers because one time Raul told me that was Boy Scouts. So
it is.
Okay. All right, we're out.